challenges. The issue of climate change has taken the front burner globally, as its effects can be seen and felt all around us, ranging from increased atmospheric temperature to irregular rainfall patterns, as well as sea level rise owing to the melting of glacial ice. Nigeria commends the Biden administration for the positive decision of returning the United States to the Paris Agreement. In addition to bringing about abundant green economic opportunities to the United States economy, the move further complements the larger transition process of global economies to low carbon development pathways. This summit would indeed prove instrumental in galvanizing high-level political support for the implementation of the Paris Agreement and its cut-wise rule book, as well as inviting more countries and stakeholders to take more climate-oriented responsibilities. As one of the most vulnerable nations, Nigeria is undertaking major environmentally sound and climate-friendly programs and treading the path of sustainability. Since ratifying the Paris Agreement in 2016, Nigeria has rolled out several policy enablers, set up institutional frameworks to cut emissions by 20% unconditionally and 45% conditionally, with international support by 2030. Nigeria is convinced that through net zero transition, tremendous prospects are available for job creation and other economic benefits. We are expeditiously implementing programs that stimulate gradual transition away from the use of wood stoves to kerosene, liquefied natural gas, biogas, and electricity. The immediate effects include healthy competition among private sector players, leading to higher productivity, employment, and faster service delivery. In the agricultural production and supply chain sector, we are targeting improved efficiency and productivity through the provision of accurate and timely weather forecasting to farmers, supply of drought-tolerant and early maturing crop varieties, and promoting empowerment towards the diversification of sources of livelihoods. Beyond ending gas flaring by 2030, the oil and gas sector has undertaken steps for diversification, risk management systems, insurance, hedging, research and development, and energy crisis planning. The Nigerian government in 2017 launched the Green Bond Program as part of its commitment contained in the Paris Climate Agreement signed on September 21st, 2016. The overall outcome of the highlighted actions have translated into food supply sufficiency, improved nutrition, less hunger, increased employment, more jobs opportunities, better livelihoods, reduce poverty, decrease vulnerability to health challenges, and higher quality of life. Excellencies, Nigeria calls on countries to embrace circular economy and sustainable production and consumption models in order to expedite attainment of the long-term goals of Paris Agreement. I wish Your Excellencies to reiterate Nigeria's commitment to galvanize the relevant stakeholders for climate action and our readiness to extend support to regional, continental, and global multilateral processes for the attainment of the lofty objectives of the Paris Agreement. The fight to redress the impact is the responsibility of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for highlighting the incorporation of green jobs into the recovery from the health and economic crisis in Nigeria. It is now my pleasure to introduce the President of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. President Phuc, we look forward to your remarks.
The Honorable Joe Biden, President of the United States of America, Excellencies, Presidents, Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I thank President Biden for inviting me and other leaders to this very important summit. I commend the United States' return to the Paris Agreement. I believe that the renewed leadership and strong commitment that President Biden espoused during the opening session, combined with our shared efforts, will lead us on the path towards achieving the goals of Paris Agreement. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, climate change is undoubtedly a major existential crisis for many countries and to our planet. In Vietnam last year alone, extreme weather has taken hundreds of lives and reversed decades of progress in poverty reduction. The Mekong Delta, our rice bowl, and the home to more than 20 million Vietnamese, is suffering immensely from rising sea level, especially towards the end of this century. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, transitioning to a green net zero emission economy is an inevitable trend and imperative to limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is a challenge, but will also bring about huge opportunities and benefits, including jobs, ensuring energy security, and enhancing economic competitiveness and sustainability. Vietnam resolves to follow this path. At the same time, we need a suitable roadmap for developing countries where much hardship remains. Accordingly, I wish to highlight the following points. First, transition must be just and inclusive. It must ensure equal access to opportunity, benefits, place the people at the center, and leave no one behind. It must especially be supported by the people, businesses, and scientist communities. Second, developed countries must continue to take the lead in emission reduction commitment while giving greater concrete support to developing countries, including Vietnam, in financing, in new technology development, in high quality and efficient infrastructure, and in job creation. We welcome and hope to receive the assistance from the U.S. International Climate Finance Plan and other international financial arrangements, including from international companies and corporations. Third, the pursuit of climate goals should be compatible with each country's conditions, including the need to alter their lifestyles, their modes of production, and their work. This endeavor must be integrated into national development strategies and plans. Each country must itself make efforts and make good use of international aid and resources. There need to be national mechanisms for oversight and evaluation of implementation to improve the ability to recover. Vietnam is a developing country. Our industrialization has only truly begun 3 decades ago, yet we make every effort to contribute to the global action Vietnam had been quick to submit its NDCs to the United Nations and mainstream them into our domestic law for earnest enforcement. By 2030, we pledge to reduce emission by 9% with our domestic resources, or 27% if provided international support, bilaterally and multilaterally. We will greatly reduce coal-based power generation and increase the share of renewables in the total energy, primary energy supply to 20% by 2030 and 30% by 2045. We will reduce greenhouse emission intensity per GDP by nearly 15% and methane emission from agricultural production by 10%. Earlier this month, Vietnam launched a program to plant 1 billion trees by 2025. This project alone is expected to absorb 2 to 3% of Vietnam's total emission by 2030. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I'm confident that the challenges of climate change shall be drivers for solidarity and positive change as we move towards COP26 in the UK and contribute to a more sustainable future for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President, for sharing your thoughts on the intersection of renewable investments and job creation. It is now my pleasure to introduce the President of the Republic of Poland. President Duda, the floor is yours.
Distinguished President Biden, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, presidents, prime ministers, secretaries of state, advisors. First and foremost, let me start by thanking President Joe Biden for inviting me to the summit. Poland plays a very active role in the global climate policy. Let me just mention that it was with huge reduction surplus of CO2 that we managed to accomplish the commitments on the Kyoto Protocol from 1997. This surplus was the assumption of 6% reduction, and in our case, we managed to reduce by as many as 27% because the reduction was 33. 3 times Poland hosted climate COP conferences. In 2018, at COP24 in Katowice, we developed under the Polish leadership the Katowice Rulebook, as well as the Solidarity and Just Transition Silesia Declaration. This paved the way for the adoption of the Paris Agreement and allowed to enhance the importance of human dimension in the spirit of the principle that nobody should be left behind. The momentum given by Poland at COP24 has contributed to the European Union becoming the first global economy to adopt the goal of climate neutrality by 2050 and to further decrease its emissions by 2030 by at least 55%. Poland participates in these ambitious efforts. We are also pleased that a number of states have followed in the EU's footsteps. Let me mention that climate is the subject to which the 3C States Initiative attaches great importance. Poland is part of the 3C States Initiative, like other Central Europe countries located between the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, and the Adriatic Sea. In recent days, I talked to the presidents of Slovenia, Mr. Borut Pahor, Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda, and Bulgaria, Rumen Radev, who currently holds the presidency of the 3Cs initiative. In the 3Cs region, it is clear to us that we have to implement an ambitious climate policy based on the principles of just transition, taking into account the realities of our countries and the welfare of our societies. This is a challenge, especially there where there is a need to conduct deep economic changes, including the possible closing down of certain industrial sectors, such as coal sector. These are very serious challenges for states such as Poland or Bulgaria. Climate policy is going to be the subject of our discussions during our meeting in July this year during the summit of 3Cs in Sofia, the capital city of Bulgaria. Let me stress, however, that all of us acknowledge climate goals set by the European Union, and all of us have ambitions to implement them. Ladies and gentlemen, by pure political declarations, we're not going to change the reality. That is why Poland plans to build a new zero-emission energy system over the next 2 decades, thanks to which the share of coal is going to drop from the current 70% to as little as 11% in 2040. This is not only an answer to the agreements within the European Union, but first of all, this gives the response to the expectations of the new generation of Poles, the young generation. This week, I met the Youth Climate Council, which brings together young representatives of NGOs in Poland who fight for natural environment and climate protection. They expect the implementation of ambitious climate goals, and at the same time, they are fully aware of the fact how difficult this road is. And perhaps I'm even more satisfied to communicate to you, ladies and gentlemen, that yesterday, in Poland, in our country, we entered into an agreement after a long social dialogue between miners, coal miners, and representatives of the Polish government. This agreement respects phasing out coal from the production of electricity by 2049. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge success of the social dialogue that we've been having in Poland. This is also a great and ambitious plan for the future. If we consider that today, coal to produce electricity in Poland is about 70%. Therefore, Poland will build a sustainable low-emission energy mix based on nuclear and renewable energy, as well as gas. Unless we apply all available technologies, the transformation of our energy system will simply not be possible. Polish-US agreement on the development of the Polish civil nuclear power program dated October 2020 confirms our ambitions. It highlights the importance of international cooperation in the field of energy and climate policy. We should therefore coordinate international research and development efforts to create a critical mass of affordable technologies, innovative technologies, which are also price affordable. We should also think how central banks in our countries can support energy transformation in line with the principle of technological neutrality. A climate-friendly transition provides a huge opportunity also for our citizens and all sectors of our economy. That is the reason why Poland has placed electromobility in the center, both in public as well as in individual transport. It offers a powerful chance to develop our industry and to create new jobs. Already now, we are the biggest exporter of e-buses in the European Union, with a 46% share in the European market recorded last year. Furthermore, Poland has become a European leader in the production of lithium-ion batteries. We are ambitious also in the sector of individual transport and plans to phase out combustion engines, which I believe will open up a vast potential for cooperation on both sides of the Atlantic. We also attach considerable importance to mitigation. Polish governmental agency State Forests has implemented a pilot program of forest sinks carbon farms. It is a system aimed at using forest resources to stimulate the absorption of CO2 from the atmosphere and to accumulate it within the forest ecosystem and in wood products. The concept of forest sinks carbon farms deserves, I believe, to be legitimized as part of international legal order. Ladies and gentlemen, the pandemic has brought the world to a halt for a moment. While getting back on the track of development, let's make sure that this is not the old track. Let us build a synergy between the following three conventions: Convention on Climate Change, on Biological Diversity, and to combat desertification. Let us use this opportunity to restore the world as a better, more just, more solidarity-based, and more sustainable place. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for sharing the role of workers, in particular within your decarbonization strategy. I would now like to recognize my good friend and colleague, the United States Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg.
Thank you. Thank you, President Biden, for your leadership on this defining issue of our time. Thank you, Ambassador Tai, for everything that you're doing in the U.S. and around the world. As we've just heard from these distinguished leaders, we are here to chart new paths forward to confront the climate crisis. Achieving our climate goals will create new jobs and harness the ingenuity of our industries and workers. In the U.S., the transportation sector is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gases, which means that this sector has the opportunity to be among the biggest parts of the solution to climate change. The race against climate change is not just a question of what will be lost if we fail. It is about what can be gained if we succeed. For nations that successfully transition to a cleaner economy, the result will be jobs and economic growth. We are certainly recognizing that potential in the United States. President Biden recently introduced the American Jobs Plan. It represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to modernize our national infrastructure so that our economy and our climate can thrive. With its investments in electric vehicles, public transit, rail, road redesign for pedestrians, and sustainable, innovative materials, this plan will move us away from our over-reliance on fossil fuels and toward net zero carbon emissions. This plan is fundamentally an investment in our economy and our collective future. It will create millions of good jobs for the workers who will make our roads and bridges more resilient, lay new train lines, expand public transit, install electric vehicle chargers, and manufacture the vehicles that will depend on those chargers. And the majority of these new jobs will be available to workers without a degree. At least 40% of the benefits of the plan's climate investments will flow to underserved communities, which often bear the burden of transportation pollution and are at high risk of climate disruption. If our planetary warming exceeds 1.5 degrees Celsius, the impacts will be catastrophic for all of us. We still have an opportunity to prevent that if the depth of our commitment meets the urgency of this challenge before us. And that is why this gathering is so important. We are all in this together. Pursuing a net zero goal is not a zero-sum game. We all benefit if we succeed. If this pandemic has taught us anything, it's how interconnected we are and how capable we are of change. Successfully combating climate change and reaping the full economic benefits will depend not only on transportation, but on all sectors. Not only on creative ideas, but on workers literally building the future. Not only on the choices of any one nation, but on the contributions of countries all over the world. I thank President Biden and the leaders here today for meeting this moment with the urgency and courage required. Let us continue to chart this path together to the benefit of the many peoples we serve and the one climate we all share. I'm now pleased to introduce National Climate Advisor Gina McCarthy, who is helping to coordinate the all-of-society approach that you will hear about in this roundtable.
Thank you for the introduction, Secretary Buttigieg, and for all of the work that you're doing. And I'm excited to have a chance to help moderate an outstanding panel of entrepreneurs and business people. So I'll keep my remarks short so we can dive right in. From the start, one of the guiding stars of our whole-of-government approach to climate action has been how we make the most of the opportunities that combating climate change actually presents to all of us. So as we work to develop our nationally determined contribution, one of the most important things was understanding how it positioned our workers and our industries to tackle the climate crisis. President Biden has always believed that tackling the climate crisis presents an incredible economic opportunity. And the fact is that creating jobs and tackling climate change actually can go hand in hand, and it must. And that's why I'm so pleased to be talking to this group today, because more than anyone else, you understand the opportunities we have to create good-paying union jobs, to improve public health, to keep our communities safe, and to advance the issue that is so important to all of us, the issue of environmental justice. And you're showing that the opportunity is already here, and it's only going to grow alongside our ambition, so long as we invest in our infrastructure, in innovation, in our workers and in our communities. And I'm excited to hear how you are already unlocking those opportunities. So let's dive right into the conversation. So first, let me start with Sharon Burrow, the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. Sharon, you have a long history of advocating for workers around the world and have led the International Trade Union Confederation for over a decade. As the global voice for the world's working people, with over 200 million members in 163 countries, can you please share with us your vision for what ambitious climate action means for our global workforce?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Let me congratulate President Biden for the leadership on climate. We really appreciate his commitment, not just to reduce emissions, which is vital, but to meet the climate challenge with jobs, climate-friendly jobs. This is central for a just recovery for the US, but also the foundation of a new social contract for working people and their families everywhere. Jobs, good jobs, union jobs with human and labour rights and living wages, with the freedom to organise and bargain collectively, with social protection to support people in times of crisis. That's at the heart of a just transition. To stabilise the planet with net zero economies by 2050, we all know we have to get at least half of the job done by 2030. But it cannot repeat past transitions that have left workers and their communities stranded. The labour movement fought for and won global rules for just transition, first in the ILO and then in the Paris Agreement. These mean that workers and their unions must be at the table as we plan the transition. And we know this means for every sector. The foundation is clean energy, but all technologies must be deployed in manufacturing, transport, agriculture, construction, services, and of course their supply chains. We know our cities are a vital part of the equation, and you have so many great mayors because they accept responsibility for 40% of emissions, and that the demand and supply relationships from those cities can generate sustainable production and services to fuel community renewal with decent work in rural communities in our own countries. And if global trade is reformed to meet the same sustainability standards with human and labour rights and compliance respected, indeed, around the world. As the Danish Prime Minister said, a good example of that right there in the US is the framework agreement between NABTU and Ørsted, a Danish wind company. It will secure good paying jobs and training for hundreds of thousands of US workers. It's a great example of just transition in action. Europe, led by agreements with employers and unions in Germany, Spain, and other nations, are committed to a Green Deal with just transition, underpinned by a social pillar of rights. Canada, Scotland, New Zealand, South Africa, Kenya, Senegal, Ghana, and many others are amongst those with examples of agreements or social dialogue towards a just transition that will actually get the job done. This must be the case everywhere if we're to leave no one behind. But the good news is that for every dollar or euro or unit of currency invested in climate transition, there are jobs. 10 jobs in renewable energy generates 5 to 10 jobs in the supply chains, and up to 3 times that in economies where good wages are spent by those workers and their families. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we also need resilience, and care is vital to that. Healthcare, aged care, childcare, and education. There are even more jobs here as we build livable, caring communities. We have the technology. We have the finance to get the job done. And if we share it with developing countries, on top of vital debt relief, if every dollar of investment has an ESG lens, we will win the race for a just recovery and a sustainable future. But we need both ambition and the commitment on display here to a just transition with social dialogue in all those NDCs as we head towards the COP in Glasgow this year. I leave you with this commitment from the union movement. There are no jobs on a dead planet. We will work with everybody to build good jobs on a living planet.
Sharon, that was incredible. Your passion is infectious. So next, let me go to Brett Isaac, the CEO and co-founder of Navajo Power. Brett, Navajo Natural Resources have powered and will continue to power the growth of the American West. This administration is committed to empowering tribal leaders in our collective efforts to tackle the climate crisis. So how has Navajo Power envisioned tribal community-powered climate solutions?
Tribal nations have been at the epicenter of energy impact and want to continue being the driver of that effort through the cultivation of clean energy assets. As a developer of large-scale utility projects, Navajo Power envisions creating the opportunity to take those workforces and economies that were so crucial to advancing America's growth and re-engaging them in a new energy economy to advance clean energy growth needed to address climate impacts. You know, we're excited to see President Biden's vision in engaging our communities in creating real, tangible solutions to address the climate crisis. The notion that this transition must be equitable to those communities who will be on the edge of this work is a large step forward to acknowledging the foundation of this movement must begin with collaboration. You know, tribal nations believe that, you know, our role in this is to help accelerate, you know, the advancement of preservation of our culture, of our resources, and of our, you know, our Mother Earth. So the idea behind what Navajo Power wants to do is create the platform that's going to be the spark needed to accelerate the recovery and advancement of tribal economies. You know, there's a lot of workforces that were built on, you know, the previous energy economies that need this movement in order to advance and you know, usher in a new era of energy usage and energy, you know, resiliency. And we believe that, you know, Navajo Power itself can play a role in creating that landing spot for job growth, for economic growth, for communities to thrive under these conditions that we're looking to create with the development of large-scale solar, wind, storage, and all the other technologies that are yet to be developed that we need in order to get to a place where we feel like our environment is protected and preserved. And so, you know, from you know, what we see as an important step, you know, we thank President Biden for kind of convening this conversation because it's much overdue, but it's much needed in order for us to advance going forward. So I'm very proud that, you know, to be here to talk about what we're doing, but also very proud to get to work under this administration's initiatives. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. And I know that tribal voices remain so important to us if we want to hope to lift all communities and all nations. So thank you very much for those words. Now I'm excited to hear from Nutabi Sangmusia, the CEO of Easy Solar. Great name, by the way, Easy Solar. Nutabi, the African continent currently faces a significant challenge. You have 600 million people without access to a formal grid. It also has a young and growing population. So what role can renewable energy play in accelerating both access to energy and economic livelihoods in Africa so we can ensure that no one is left behind?
Thank you so much, President Biden and Jim McCarthy and your administration for convening the summit and for having me here. As a young African woman, I'm incredibly grateful for this platform. It's a unique moment in our human story, and I want to start by taking a moment to acknowledge where we find ourselves in history. Up until recent times, when any continent has attempted to bring people into the modern economy, we've done so without concern for the planet and its limits. But here today in sub-Saharan Africa, where 75% of the world's off-grid population lives, we're being asked not to copy and paste a formula that has proven effective time and time again at industrializing and modernizing human life. We have to raise people out of poverty. We have to give people dignified work that reduces inequality, all the while not just looking at the economics, but also being conscious of the climate at the same time. Now, this may sound like an unfair conundrum, and at times I lament at the injustice of having to rise above a problem we did not create. But I do believe it's a unique opportunity to look forward rather than backwards, to challenge the status quo and say economic development does not have to be dirty. Progress does not have to be recklessly unjust, that we as Africans can learn from the past while acknowledging what we have at our disposal in the present. I'm speaking to you here from Freetown in Sierra Leone.
Juste devant, faut que je me mette là. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, monsieur. Ouais, vous m'entendez là? Allô? Le lieutenant Star. Bon. Allô?
Pour l'instant, les éléments que le président a été rapportés, c'est donc cette chaîne agent administratif de 45 ans qui est au commissariat depuis longtemps, qui a été agressé violemment par un couteau à la jugulaire par une personne qui s'est au moment où elle fait rapport la visite des autorités de l'intérieur, ça m'a plutôt immédiatement
Complètement, c'est bon. Ouais, ok.